Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 31 of the Rewatch podcast, presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host, Tyler Schatz, someone who doesn't claim to be an excellent judge of character, as it evident by the fine people who are with me tonight.
Ow.
Joining me is one Stephen Howard.
Speaker of inconvenient truths, and that inconvenient truth is that I am an okay person.
Amanda Howard, who is an excellent character.
Hey!
But not here to be Queen of the Ashes.
One Nick Castillo.
If you betray me, I will burn you alive.
Noted. Last but never ever least, Gary Delaney.
This episode continues my ongoing curiosity about the anatomy of Grey Worm's penis.
Just come right out with it. I love it. I love it.
Completeness of Grey Worm's
Anatomy.
It's coming out right away with a bleep, huh?
When you write your notes, Gary, does it say that exactly, or what do you write?
No, I actually just scrolled. I have the episode open on this other screen, and I'm just going scene to scene. I was like, oh yeah, Grey Worm and Missandei, like you're doing this. And I remember just thinking back of did they ever confirm if he has root and stem or what he's got? And then I'm just watching. I was like, I don't think they did. I don't think enough time in this show is spent on knowing how capable Grey Worm is in the sack.
Oh
Wow.
Gosh.
I've gotten
no points, and may God have mercy.
everyone's audible sigh, so I feel like I've started off this episode well.
Well, with that pipe bomb dropped, I don't even know how we continue onwards. Maybe we just call the episode here. Good night, everyone.
We're good. Good night.
All right, we're here to talk about Season 7, Episode 2, titled Stormborn. Daenerys receives an unexpected visitor. Jon faces resistance. Tyrion plans the conquest of Westeros. Cersei gathers her allies. Wow. And Arya has a reunion with old friends. And Sam risks his career and life. So there is a lot of, my notes are, again, the entire episode covered here, almost point by point, because they are cramming just so much stuff into these final few episodes to try and get it to the end point.
Which I want to bring up a real quick point on that specific thing. I don't understand. They're cramming, like you said, so much into here. I don't understand how you couldn't expand it to be a normal season's worth of episodes. I really don't.
I know.
Go for it.
Made your point about what you know.
When the writers, producers want to go make their Star Wars movies and they realize, I got to get done with this Game of Thrones show real quickly, so let's cram in the 13 hours of story we have left to tell. Too much?
No, entirely true. Makes me wonder about this. They have that. What is it? Right now the strike going on, the Hollywood writers' strike. Do they even actually write anything? That's what I'm just wondering.
Oh,
Steven, send all hate mail, please,
all of
to
the audience.
Steven, because there's a lot of people that are writers professionally. Just because I do not blame the writers of the show. I think it was from the top. It's a top-down issue.
When we get to the end of our discussion on the show itself, we'll have our full wrap-up episode where we can really go into everything that went wrong with all of this stuff. But to get us back on track, I am going to talk about... Which point do I want to talk about here?
I have a random intro question.
Sure.
Before we jump in. On rewatching this episode, I noticed King's Landing still has the Baratheon stag on it.
Yep.
In the intro. Even though I believe Cersei is ruling as Cersei Lannister. She has completely abandoned any assumption of the surname Baratheon. Tyler?
I was going to say, too, even way back into Season 1, she never went by Cersei Baratheon. It was always Cersei Lannister. So the stag has basically been there since Season 1. Go for it, Nick.
Do you all highlight the last episode that the line was on King's Landing, or no?
No, the lion has never been on King's Landing.
Never been on there. That's what he was exactly saying.
Okay, gotcha. But it still
Oh.
showed the Baratheon stag.
I said that the lion was behind them in the throne room
Oh, that's what I was probably
but
thinking
not
of.
in the intro. Yeah.
I don't do as well about like keeping track of the intro, and they changed it. They do some minor changes in Game of Thrones, episode to episode as new places get introduced. Like I think Pike is in this intro, and I don't know, Pike might have been in a season and out for a season, and now it's back in because the Pike's like the Greyjoy story becomes more relevant, but. Yeah, I don't really, but that was just noticeable to me is because as they make all these other changes, like, it didn't seem thematically accurate that you wouldn't just have the Lannister lion on King's Landing. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Just a random thing you can.
I don't know where I read this. It might not have been in the books, but I do remember hearing that at one point because Cersei's always referred to as Cersei Lannister, but you see Catelyn Stark, and the explanation that it was given was like for marrying into royalty, they're still referred. They never take the royals like last names, which is why Elia of Dorne was still called Elia Martell and not Elia Targaryen when she married Prince Rhaegar.
Ooh,
So
interesting.
That's
same with Cersei. She stayed Cersei Lannister.
I'm not sure that's
that
true.
sounds
Though.
that sounds like a conspiracy theory.
Absolutely, I get the first one.
I'm not saying from a Game of Thrones standpoint. I'm just saying more from a real standpoint. I'm not sure that's
This
true.
was specifically a Game of Thrones standpoint.
Yeah,
Ooh,
so that's what
history.
Face is history.
Fair enough. Anyway, that was all I had.
All right.
Nick
So
give his yay history. Sorry, back to you, Tyler. There's a random intro one.
I think I'm gonna jump to the. I don't really know where I actually want to start, so maybe I am just gonna throw it to somebody else here. Amanda, do you want to start us off with a talking point?
Oh, I have so many notes. Let's see. Let's start at the beginning. Dany kind of grills Varys a little bit here. She asks him to talk to her first if he ever feels like she's not a good queen. But notice that she doesn't promise to be a good queen. I didn't think that acting of the actress was the best in this scene. Like it was, but it was a very, very pointed conversation. I felt like. What do you guys think, Nick?
I agree. It was a very pointed conversation. I wrote down she's bringing up season 1 and 2 crap. Like she's really digging like who sent the order to kill me, who was sending spies, and like who told them that I was married to Khal Drogo. Like she's, it's just, I think that maybe like if it was brought up more subtly. I mean, not that she's the queen of dragons, the mother of dragons. She's not supposed to be subtle per se, but she just kind of like this conversation kind of comes out of nowhere. I thought. It was extremely pointed, and I think that there's a time or two you can see in Tyrion's face at least. He realizes how dangerously close to maybe being beheaded by Grey Worm in this episode Varys is in this moment.
That's a good point. I did see a few looks there from Tyrion.
Well, and I want to point out how this conversation even started. Varys walks in and basically goes, "Hey guys, I got you allies from the country of Dorne and from Highgarden." And so how does Daenerys act to that? Oh, that's great. Let's fucking just grill this guy for doing his job in the past couple seasons. And that's just the thing. I don't understand the idea of Sir Barristan Selmy. What did she think his job was before he came to her side? Every single person she has had come to her side has been kind of a shitbag beforehand. And that's to say the slightest. The only ones I could see maybe the Unsullied and the other slaves, but even the Unsullied do their master's bidding regardless. Is she grilling them for having probably killed babes at the womb? No, because that was their job, and they would die if they didn't do it. That's exactly what Varys was doing. He was doing his job. And
blind loyalty. That's what she kind of wanted. She said
And so I'm gonna stop that part there because I know there's other things that people want to talk about here, but I do want to revisit this on a different point, maybe after we talk a little bit more about this. Gary.
Conspiracy theory number 2. Varys is actually the defining character in Daenerys's rise, between getting poisoned and being all the things that she asked who gave the order. Like, you realize Varys is the most has caused the most character development for Dany throughout the first 3 seasons, because he is the connection between Westeros and Dany. Like, all things go through his spiders. Not a great conspiracy theory, but
no, not a great conspiracy theory.
I got beat out on the first conspiracy theory, so I was
Yes. It's my triumph. He was definitely pulling the threads a lot long. That would directly affect her for a lot longer. Like, everyone in this world affects each other, albeit how distantly. But like, his was very much more direct, even though she didn't know it at the time. Go ahead, Nick.
I think even kind of like what Steven said, what prompts this conversation is Dany's mindset, I think, is already kind of on a darker subject. Because this episode is called Stormborn, and it starts with Dany just like contemplatively staring out the window at this storm. So it's kind of like a raging backdrop. And she's kind of talking about, I was born under this kind of a storm, and everyone's like, it was such a crazy time. You know, Varys says the dogs in King's Landing howled all night long, and then she starts looking at the pieces on the board that they have in the big map room there, and she says, what would my brother Viserys have done with 3 dragons, an army, and a fleet at his back? And she says he would have attacked and burned everybody already. So she's kind of already, like, she doesn't say that's not what I'm going to do until she's prodded a little bit at first. She's kind of just like sitting there thinking and weighing the options. And I almost thought for a moment there, like, she's thinking how easy it would be. I don't think she's contemplating, I could go here, they would do this would burn. She's just thinking, like, what should I do? And clearly, as she starts talking to Varys, she highlights how Viserys was not a good king. But yeah, she's talking about how she could be better. Thanks, Gary. Good comment. So she's trying to find out what should she do? What should we do? What should be their plan? And yeah, she seems that their plan should be attack Varys right off the bat. It just kind of seems like she's already kind of in this attacking, aggressive mode. Was kind of how I took it.
And I'm not even sure it's an aggressive attacking mode. It's more of a vengeful mode. It is a hateful mode. It is a mode of
behind that.
How can I do damage to my enemies and to those who have wronged me? And the way that I come to that is the second point that I was going to make. And that point was when it's what Amanda alluded to, when she is grilling Varys it keeps his composure entirely. Say what you want about Tyrion being afraid for him, Varys isn't afraid at all in this entire conversation. He needs to lose his head, he'll do it. It's for the sake of the kingdom, and he, honest to God, believes in that, and I respect the hell out of Varys for that stand. And then, what does he say? He says, I do everything I do for the people of this kingdom. And what Dany says, well, then promise me that you'll never go around my back, that you'll always go to me with that sort of thing. And he says, he basically says, promise to be a good queen. Well, he definitely promises to her not to go around her back. She never is able to make the promise that she's going to be a good queen, a fair queen, any sort of a just ruler. She is not willing
to be a fair queen.
I'm not entirely sure, but she doesn't offer it either. And this is very, very much what Varys is coming from. It's not something where he is really hiding this. He is saying, I will only turn against you if you are a bad ruler, if you are a legitimately horrible human being. And she says, your father, there are few people who are worse in this kingdom's history than your father. And straight up says it to her. And what can she do? If you are trying to earn the loyalty of anyone, or if you're trying to just show, I don't know, that you're an okay human being, one of the things you say is, yeah, I'm not my father. I'm not going to burn down all this stuff. And honest to God, she has to be almost talked down from burning down villages, from burning down places. I don't believe that she comes into this conversation, no, I'm not going to do that. She's already put that off to the side. that is an option on the table for her, and she has to be talked down from it, in my opinion. And I think this is showing a lot of what Varys is and should be afraid of, and that is she's not stable. She wants vengeance. She wants death. She wants to kill. Gary.
I could go next really quick.
I
Okay.
Nick
Gary.
can go. That'll give me at least another 20 minutes.
I was gonna say I don't know if I'm quite on board with Steven, your comment about she wants blood and vengeance and to kill. I think she has that mindset, but I don't know if she's quite there yet. Like if there's a scale of Steven's, she's a terrible person and she wants death. I think I'm slightly sliding towards that way, where some of these early conversations in this part of the season are showing that she does have that mentality. I don't know. I do agree she does need to be talked down from contemplating it, but I don't know if she thinks it's a full option on the table, is what I was going to say. Time. Sorry, your turn.
Time. Amanda originally mentioned that there was some poor acting in this scene, and I don't know if you were talking about specifically Daenerys, that actress, or some of the other actresses in the scene.
Daenerys. Specifically Daenerys.
I hesitate. She's done a really great job acting at this thing, but just I felt like this scene, the lines were delivered sounding angry, but they didn't have that much oomph behind them.
I was gonna say, as you said that, all I could think about was like, there's a lot of characters or actors in the scene who are very heavily weighted in B plot lines. The Greyjoys, the Dornish people, the Flower people, very much
Flower
B
people.
storylines.
Flower people.
Flower people.
You're referencing the next scene there, Gary, where all of those people are in there, in
That's
the
true. It's a different scene.
council room there, or whatever.
Oh,
Next
But-
episode.
that would be
next episode.
That would be my confusion, is that I just probably was not really paying attention to that first scene of Daenerys. So
Like she's had to show anger, like she's had that where like you made the dragon or woke the dragon, where she's been furious when her dragons were stolen, all this, and like in this time, like she's grilling Varys, and yet she doesn't even seem that scary to me in this episode. Like she just seemed ungrateful.
okay, that scene, I guess I can see that she was a little. For the monologue she had, she was playing a little, not playing up to her weight. But I pulled the Nick. I combined two scenes that were like half an hour apart into one conversation. So, apologize. Nick is making offensive gestures. Nick, you're up.
Anytime you speak, I make offensive gestures, Gary. I agree. She doesn't. The way you said that, Amanda, she doesn't need to be angry in this scene. Her character just landed. She's accomplished coming across the sea with all of her armies. She has all the might in the world. She doesn't need to immediately start attacking the people closest to her, let alone allies who are helping.
Yeah, but she
But
also
she seems
just
to be,
landed
yeah.
here. Like this makes it seem like she's just having this conversation with Varys. She just went across the sea with him. Like he was on the boat next to her.
This is something to say, hey, before we land and we start making battle plans, I want to make sure you're in my corner. Even a conversation that says, I want loyalty, doesn't have to end with threats. She ends that conversation, like you were saying, Stephen, if you betray me, I will burn you alive. You could just say, hey, we're on the same page, right? This is what I want us to understand. It doesn't have to be, I will burn you alive. Varys, rightly so, like you said, stands in front of her unabashedly and says, I expect nothing less from the Mother of Dragons. Like, he just accepts that would be his fate. But the way that she just like throws that out on the table, it's very dark, and it's a place that does kind of, like I said, push me a little bit towards Steven on that category of how we view Dany. I think that she does have darker tendency. We've talked about earlier on in this series how
locking people in vaults.
Like when a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin, right? So she probably has some of those tendencies, but she keeps coming back to it, or at least we've talked before about her council. They've talked her down from it. So we'll see how well attacking your council gets you.
I mean, you guys were talking about the amount of time she traveled with Varys. You forget Varys has unlocked fast travel. So
Oh,
That's
yeah,
true.
sorry. My
I was just
bad.
going to comment that
Anyway.
too there.
I forgot about that little achievement. How do I get that?
You have to be a eunuch. Sorry, can't do it.
Oh, okay.
you have to
Lose some of the game
lose
time.
your. Well, I already got one bleep for this episode. You have to lose something important.
You get one genitalia reference per podcast, Gary.
No.
So,
No.
so here, I do have a question for the group. Then we're talking about this being such a drastic change. Does her mind break when she sets foot on the Westeros? Like, she gets here and we're talking about, you guys, I think that she's kind of been crazy the entire time, but we're talking about in general, everyone else saying this is a very big 180 kind of thing for her. Has her mind snapped when she walked in?
So I am going to play the devil's advocate of the whole group here so far and say that conversation, I think, was, in Gary's phrase, poor writing there. I think it wasn't acted or directed or kind of given enough thought of how they wanted to portray that conversation with Varys. I think it should have been more of her communicating with Varys and going, okay, are you on my side? If you're not, or if you, I mean, like, you've betrayed the previous king. You claim to be for the people, so I am, I think she's trying to make it seem like I am for the people as well. If I am doing something that you don't agree with, please come tell me. And then obviously, though, the threat of burning alive, yeah, that's a little far there too. And them talking about burning the city too. I think they're comparing a lot, though, that to Aegon, the original conqueror of Westeros, where they have a lot of divided kingdoms. He flew in, conquered them one by one, and put them all underneath his rule there. So I think ultimately this scene is just kind of I would say overall a bad scene. Like, I mean, again, nothing against the actors or anything like that. They're doing what they can with the direction that they've been given, but I don't think it comes off the way it should have. I'm going to go with Nick.
So what I took away from that was I disagree with Steven. First of all, I don't think it's a 180. If that's what I was coming off as, I don't think that this is a change for her. I just think it's a different direction. Like, I see Dany on an arc, and I think that this definitely bent it down towards a deeper place for her character rather than an upwards trajectory towards the Iron Throne. It just seems like, yeah, it may get you the ends, but do the ends justify the means? I don't know. So that's kind of my response for Steven, but for Tyler's comments too, I think that the way that they handle it, the words could be poor, which could be part of the poor writing, but I think that this is something that has to be addressed. I mean, at some point, those two characters have to address that, yes, Varys and his little spies tried to conspire to kill her. And we've seen Dany before after people who she has felt either truthfully or have been perceived to slight her. So I don't think that it's something that's a bad scene. I think it's a scene that does have to take place, and I'd rather have it take place earlier. If it were me, I'd want to address it with my generals, certainly, but I wouldn't want it to happen later on when I could be potentially backstabbed by them. The way it's written, it does seem, like we said before, more aggressive. So it could be the wording was really poor. I think the scene is necessary, though. Gary.
I was on Steven's question. I think some of it's that Daenerys has already proven that she has a lot of ideals, but she struggles with ruling. Like, she's already had some fails, and I would ask the question, when she landed on Westeros, did all of these ideas of what she had, the way she envisioned Westeros, and that she was going to have this grand entrance, and kind of how she imagined it, because I'm sure she had a couple months on a boat surrounded by people who are gaslighting her, is that the right word, kind of hyping her up, and then she landed, and the realization that she was going to have to fortify down in this crappy castle that, for until the rain subsides. she's mustered all of her forces, maybe didn't live up to her expectation of just freeing slaves and going to the next town. Tyler?
To go back to Nick's point there, yeah, I will agree with you, Nick, that it definitely should have happened early and everything like that. I didn't mean to kind of imply that it shouldn't or whatever. I just think, like, again, overall, the way the scene is constructed, the way it is kind of talked and verbalized throughout the scene, it went the direction. I think it went the opposite direction as intended instead.
I have a random question or query. When was the last scene that Varys had with Daenerys other than the boat scene?
I don't like. I was thinking about that. I don't think they've ever actually had a scene together because when Daenerys was gone,
but I think they might have just been like. I don't think they talked ever. I think they just might have been in the background.
He might have been in the background, maybe in one of the courtroom
passing
scenes
in the night.
But like when Daenerys showed back up to retake the city there, I think Varys was already gone on his fast travel quest.
Before that.
I think so, and because like the only scene that I can remember is when they were finally sailing, and she's standing on the boat next to Tyrion, and Varys is like off to the side a little bit, but he is definitely like within 10 feet of her. And so I'm like, if you're on a boat, you're in pretty close quarters, and I would have used that entire voyage to grill the hell out of him because this man's got information.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. That was my question. Is that it is sometimes noticeable that characters don't interact in the show. The one I always point out is Cersei Lannister and Bronn never interact because the two actors were divorced in real life. You will never ever see them in the same scene. And I just was wondering, like, was there a reason that Varys was just never in the scenes, or it was they were focusing on the Tyrion storyline of trying to give Tyrion some meat to his story, his redemption arc. Is he on a redemption arc?
It's a good question.
He better not be, otherwise Gary says he's going to die.
Does that mean can I be on a redemption arc?
You're always on a redemption arc, but it'll never work.
I don't think there's anything to redeem there.
I'm irredeemable. That's a realization for a Tuesday night.
Does he give up conspiracy theories at the end of his redemption arc?
I forgot that part of Steven's question was not just the 180, but did she lose her mind or did her mind break landing on King's Landing? I think maybe people often have a tendency to trip up right at the finish line. That's where that phrase comes from. Like the closer you get to your goal, the more you focus on the end and forget the race to get there. So I don't know if her mind breaks. I think that might be a bit much for me. But I think that she definitely gets distracted is probably the word I'd say.
She's suffering from scurvy. Like she's been at sea for several months. Is her mind a little bit sloshy with the waves?
Not sure scurvy does that to you. Not sure that's how scurvy works.
I know nothing about scurvy.
Scurvy does not.
I believe it's a lack of vitamins and vitamin C, and it affects your your gums bleed easier and stuff like that. But I'm literally going off of books, so who knows? So
anyway, can just the physical act of being on a boat that long and being sequestered on a boat for that long kind of sort of F with your mind?
See, there's an interesting thing. They should have put the boat right in there a little more.
Yeah, there's really. I feel like there's not a lot of boat time in this show. Like.
Yeah, because boat time's boring to show on TV.
Yeah, it's almost like walking down to King's Landing for several episodes. That'd be so boring. Who would want to watch an episode like that?
Like, fair, I don't know how much time Dany's had on a boat. Like, I mean, she's been in Pentos and then was with the Dothraki Horde and then wandered around the Red Wastes. Hasn't really been much time in a boat, so I don't know. Maybe it affects her differently.
She's a dragon. She needs to be flying. She can't be boating.
Exactly. She can't talk when it happens.
All right.
Anyway,
Did we want to move on to the next topic then?
Yeah, let's do it. We got lots.
What do you got then, Amanda?
The whole episode.
We got lots to do. Let's see. Let me move you guys over to something just a little interesting, a little throwback I noticed. The if we move down to where Sam is going through his library and he's trying to help Jorah Mormont, which is adorable. Sam has gotten so good when he's determined on something. Such a change from when he was like first introduced as a character. You're not dying, Sir Jorah. What a good job. However, the book that he's quoting to Archmaester, he goes, it's Maester, and I'm gonna mess this up, Kvealthen. I think that might have been that book that Tyrion a couple of seasons ago was talking about to Bronn, and they were debating how to pronounce the Kvit. I can't say it. Kvealthen.
Kavuchi Buchi?
Yeah, like Tyrion and Bronn were like, they were both like Maester Kavizet, and then like Varys came in and was like, oh, Master Kvealthen. And he says, dreadful writer, but an excellent researcher. The Archmaesters does. I just thought it was a fascinating little throwback. And the book was A History of the House of Lannister. That was the book he was holding.
Interesting.
Nice little Easter egg, I thought, that I never caught before.
That was like the very first
missed
book that
that.
was placed on the pile there, wasn't it? That Sam was holding.
I think so, yeah. That was the
Yeah.
one he was holding.
I caught that too.
look
I
at you
caught-
zooming in, trying to find the details.
I paused it when I heard the name and was like, wait a minute, was that the thing? Because I paused it, which drove Steven nuts because he just wants to watch the show for some reason, not constantly have me pause it. And then that was the only reason I saw that it was the Lannister history. I was just writing down that it was that Maester particularly. So, nice little Easter egg. Never caught that before. Loved it. But also, Sam trying to debride the outer layer of skin for Ser Jorah. Very excellent visuals. They were horrible. Go ahead, Tyler.
That is a very very powerful acting from whoever the guy who's playing Jorah, because he can't scream. He just has to kind of moan, and he has to kind of act up that this is excruciating. Like, he has to be loud but still be quiet. Like,
I want to point out, I don't think I've ever heard Gary compliment someone's acting before.
he's gonna die. He has grayscale, so good
He's
acting.
cheering on. He's been on
Wait,
this ride.
yeah, good acting.
Been on this ride with the hero of the revolution, so he's just complimenting his acting because the character's in pain.
So I'm a sadist now.
Yes, that's what I was alluding to.
Got it.
My question, I guess, about that would be, why do you think it is that Sam just feels so wanting and needing to save Ser Jorah there? Because he knows his father, and he knew his father was a great man. But everything I think he's probably heard about his son is he was a slaver. He fled the family there, put the family name to shame. And for all Sam knows, Jorah could just be a terrible person now who's been gallivanting the region. Gary.
I think there's something with the Night's Watch where they're the brothers of the Night's Watch. I think it even goes back to season 1 where the gentleman who takes Arya north is a member of the Night's Watch. And he specifically says, like, I'll do this for you because Benjen is like a brother. Your brother Benjen is my brother of the Night's Watch. So I'm doing this to you because I feel like we're family. And obviously, sort of the general thing where the honor you provide, people will provide to your immediate family. And I think maybe this is just an extension of that. Sam really does think highly of Jorah's dad and just cannot imagine turning a blind eye to him. He's made some mistakes. He's traveled the world, but he doesn't deserve this. Nick?
I see it as not necessarily even if Jorah does turn out to be a terrible person for Sam. It's just that Theor Mormont was such an amazing leader. He feels like, he has to help him out because he knows how his father was cut down, even though his father tried to always do the right thing. His father was willing to be kind to Sam at the Castle Black, even though everybody else was, Tyler's favorite character, Sir Alistair, was basically the worst human being ever. Dior took him in and was still willing to help him out and let him tool around with Mr. Aemon. So I think that there's a reverence there just because your father was such a great person, even if I've heard only horrible things about you. How I saw it.
So I'm going to go the opposite direction, and I'm going to say there is no reason. I believe that this is I do think that when you said, I think when you said, your brother Benjen's like a brother to me, I think that was just, hey, they had a very good bond. Because as we've seen, no, not everyone in the Night's Watch is very, all together. But instead, what I think the issue is they've killed off every single other maester in the show besides Clyburn. And so I bet there is a maester going to do this. I bet you they don't have any maesters left alive to be able to say that they do it besides Clyburn and Sam. And therefore, they are stuck in a position where they have not introduced enough characters and they have killed off too many characters. And now they have to force it on another character who probably will not be doing it when this actually happens, if it actually happens.
I'm kind of on Steven's boat. I was holding my book question mark sign up to ask if the book has gotten to this point. Tyler?
Sorry to jump in front of you there, Nick. So yeah, to explain the book difference here, Jorah doesn't have grayscale in the book. Jorah is outside of the city of Meereen right now with Tyrion at this army's encampment as they're trying to get back into the city. Dany is still gone. But the person who does have grayscale in the book from saving Tyrion in the kind of same location, his name's John Coddington, is it?
Yeah, the Griffin.
Okay. He's another banished knight, basically kind of similar to Jorah there, who's following along with what is called the fake Aegon plotline that is going on now.
So there's a possibility that Steven's point that it might not have happened this way, but they just consolidated some plot lines. Or my theory was just that they just sort of wrote themselves into a corner. They wanted to give him a much better plot to reintroducing to Dany, and then when the season ended, they were like, "Well, shoot, we have to cure this because we want him to be an ongoing character." And they're like, "Oh, well, Sam's there. Like, Sam can cure it. Fine enough. Good job." Nick? Blurry Nick. We're going to Blurry Nick.
I was going to say, I don't know. I saw this. Like I said, I will get there. You'll know when I get there with the terrible writing and the poor plot devices, but I'm not quite there yet. I see this
dirty,
much
Nick.
more.
You shouldn't say that.
You'll know when I get there, Gary. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, baby.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby.
Podcast After Dark. I feel like the Maester. I had a note on here that the Maester just like flat out nods to the corner and like, how you choose to spend your last day is up to you, sir. And nods to the corner. Why don't you just off yourself? Like, I had a note about how dangerous and deadly and like it's a death sentence to get grayscale this can be. So I didn't necessarily think that this is poor writing. We have to save him. This is the only, like, they have no one else who can help him. None of the other Maesters are knowledgeable or trained in how to do this. I just kind of saw it as this is such a terrible disease. None of them feel it's worth saving, or there's no good way to do this procedure, right? So that's kind of the direction I went with it. Is that it's not that we had to give this to Sam to try and save him because Sam's needs a redemption arc. Sam's kind of already had several redeeming qualities despite the situations he's been in. It's that they don't feel it's worth saving him somehow. And so Sam's the only person willing to break the rules through compassion, willing to attempt to try and do this. Is how I took it.
I will 100% disagree with Nick. I believe this is a character I feel as Nick was talking, and I heard the Charlie Brown teacher with the trombone. I was thinking that this really doesn't have anything to do with Jorah. I think this is supposed to be a redemption arc for Sam, because
Why?
you slowly see him kind of getting a backbone, and this is him
Sam's had a
being
backbone
like,
before.
This is
He's
character
killed a White
growth,
Walker.
not a redemption. Character growth.
Growth.
what
Thank
Tyler
you,
said,
Tyler.
character growth, because this is him being ultimately defiant. Because
dark,
previously he like stole a
quietly in the
key so
night.
he could quietly like learn all the things to actually make a difference in the world, and now this is him like very directly like getting himself into physical harm that he could infect himself with grayscale. Nick?
I will say that yes, it is him willing to put himself in harm's way with the grayscale. But what we just talked about with Varys is being directly defiant. Sam doing this in the middle of the night saying, don't make any noises, otherwise we'll be busted, is not directly defiant. In my mind. It's just him.
I just think it's
doing
character
some
development.
actions
I don't
right
think it
out
has
somebody.
anything, like when I kind of took a step back, like I don't think it has anything to do with Jorah. I think they just had to wrap up Jorah's grayscale. Like honestly, they could have written grayscale completely out of the show. I don't think we'd be any worse.
It'd have been
He
nice
could just
if they
have-
mentioned it
have
more.
a-
Like,
He could just have an STD. He just needs to go.
Just
get an
gonna have an
taken care of.
STD.
Oh my goodness sakes.
it would have been nice if they mentioned grayscale a little bit more. It is mentioned a lot in the books as like this great shadowy disease like that lives on the edge where they don't like. So I mean, as soon as someone got it, I was like, oh my god, how horrible. But yeah, it's not really alluded to as much on the show, which there's only so many details they can fit in there. But you're right, Nick, that they do a good job at this point of showing like just as a fearsome disease.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. Nick is wrong. Moving on.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's such a tool.
All right. I think that kind of wraps up that point. Amanda, did you have anything else you want to talk about, or?
Yeah, let's see what you guys bring up.
Okay. We'll throw it to Steven now.
So I guess the other big thing that happened for me was John's conversation, and I apologize if I'm taking this from you, Tyler, but John's conversation with the Lords of the North basically saying, hey, I'm going to go and talk to this new queen who just invaded that we've all heard about and try to enlist her help for the North. And without letting her know, basically handing over the North to a sister. I had thoughts about this with Amanda. We had a discussion about this when we were watching it. No, it is not the next episode, Gary. Maybe you should watch this episode. Anyways. So he walks... He's basically alerted that there is a massive amount of dragon glass on Daenerys... what is it?
Dragonstone.
Thank you, Dragonstone. And he needs that dragon glass to fight the White Walkers. So the only way that he can get over there is to parlay with Daenerys. And Tyrion convinces also Daenerys to parlay with, parlay, quote unquote, with Jon. And I will also say Daenerys' last thing she says to Tyrion, as Tyrion's trying to convince her that allies are in fact a good thing, is as long as he bends the knee. Like, good God, get over yourself. Anyways.
So just ask it once.
Yeah, just, But one of the things that he does, though, is he decides he's going to go over there without any consultation with his lords. He announces to the lords without really any sort of thing that, yeah, he's going to go do this. And then he announces to Sansa, hey, by the way, you're in charge. Lol. See you guys. So, yeah, what are your guys' thoughts, Gary?
I don't think he ever directly confirms that he's going to bend the knee. Just that he needs something from Daenerys, and he was summoned. The way he public speakers it, and obviously he's not a great public speaker, is that he never specifically says that he's going to withhold or forfeit the North, but he does say that he cares about the North enough to parlay with the Mad King's daughter. Like, that's what he's also on the rewatch. He says, like, I'm the only one who's seen the White Walkers, and it's kind of that like light bulb moment where you realize where Tormund Giantsbane is, and that is that they are manning the wall. Like, and that became very apparent that, like, in this scene, if you had the free folk there, it would have played very differently than a room just full of Northern Lords. Like, so I think they were kind of taken out of the plot so that these sorts of Northern Lord scenes could happen unobstructed. But anyway, I just think he's an okay guy. But whatever. Amanda.
I have to disagree with Gary. Is like during this scene, the first thing that I said
Oof.
was when I was watching this with Steven was like, God, he is doing this conversation with way too many people in the room. That is like that is more than a committee. That is like everybody. And almost immediately Steven pointed out, yeah, but that's how John does. John like always has this. And I wasn't quite sure what he was referring to, but it did make me realize that like John
Always
listens.
has too many people.
He does always have too many people in the room. But the thing is, he does convince them to what he's thinking, or at the very least, he convinces them to let him try it, even if they don't agree with him. He listens to everyone. He tells them why he's going to do what he will. He does do good speeches. That's my point of disagreement, Gary. I'm sorry. I think John gives good speeches. And he even does that touching little thing. Like, there's that point where Sansa just like, and I think she gets a lot of flack for this, like on social media, as like she was undermining him. But like, the Northern Lords were literally doing the exact same thing, and it's not called undermining when it's them, only when it's her. Yeah, she didn't like talk to him about this behind, but like I thought she brought up good points, and she did it in a respectable manner. But he also put that thing in there about leaving it in good hands. Like, he acknowledged her publicly that this power is in your hands. You will do a good job of taking care of this. Like, that gives her a lot of things, and it also proves to these guys that he's not just abandoning them. He has someone there to take care of them. Go ahead, Tyler.
And we should also mention here too that there was a scene that took place before, I think it was before this, that kind of ties into this scene of Melisandre shows up at Dragonstone to talk to Daenerys about the Great War, the Long Night, basically the forever night against the fight against the undead there, trying to talk to Dany about taking part in that war and convincing Jon Snow to meet with Jon Snow there, basically. And that's where Tyrion and Dany have like a conversation about, yeah, I know Jon Snow. I traveled north to the Wall with him. Is he a good person? Yeah, he was okay. So that kind of went on there, which is then Tyrion sends a message to Jon to come to meet with Dany there, basically. At no point does Jon say he's going to bend the knee. That conversation never comes up. He basically just says he's going to go treat with the Dragon Queen there. She has obsidian or dragon glass, which they need, and they also need allies in the fight against the undead there. So Jon is coming at it from the perspective of she is another possible ally. We both have common cause against Cersei, although they probably don't know that quite yet, but we as the viewers know that they both have common cause against Cersei there. And also, too, you brought up the great point there, Amanda, of him turning to Sansa and saying, we're leaving it in capable hands, your hands there. So, but also, too, yeah, like there's way too many people in the room of Northern Lords there. So obviously you're going to get everybody rebel rousing, trying to get their point through. And I think it's another situation of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. They all proclaimed him King of the North. He said that. You guys all did that. I didn't really want that, but here I am trying to do the best that I can there, basically, because the North is my home and I will do what I can to protect it. Nick.
I was also kind of evaluating his speech as he was giving that information. I noticed that, like, after every word he said, the crowd muttered, was what the subtitle said, right? Like, I'm a Stark, I'm going south. Oh my god. To treat with the Mad King's daughter, who's aligned with the Lannisters. Oh my god. Yeah, everybody's going undermining what he's saying, even though what he's trying to do we see and we know, and of course the beautiful music again underscores that this is the right thing to do and highlights how benevolent he is in what he's trying to get across. And so yeah, we feel it's the right move, but yeah, absolutely, it seems very suspicious and does not seem like the right move for those who are not the audience members. For these lords in the room, just like you said, several people made the comment, we crowned him king, he's in charge, hooray, and he just pieces out the door. You're just like, what the hey? So it's definitely very curious. Yeah, I also had the same comment too about how he and Sansa both made this pact and, Pinky swore behind doors, we will always have each other's back. Let's not undercut each other in public. And then that's all they proceed to do for the next few episodes. I think, again, like we've talked in previous podcasts about how Sansa comes off as naive, but she does have a very sincere place of where her comments are coming from. And Jon, I think in this scene does kind of, give her the acknowledgement in front of the lords. Maybe that was his intent, why he has so many noblemen in the room. If there's only a handful there, they're kind of like, what? Sansa? She never speaks her mind, and it's terrible, but having her be confident enough to stand up and speak in front of all the lords, and then Jon publicly acknowledging that she's worth the title and responsibility, maybe that's why he had everybody there, because it highlights how he does trust her, whether that was his intent or not.
Okay, one of the things I think we're missing from my original comment, though, is he doesn't even let Sansa know he's going to drop this bomb on her. I mean, if you were going to hand off control of the Northern Kingdom to someone else, wouldn't you at least give them a sort of a heads up before you do it? Like, walk in, hey, by the way, sis, I'm going to drop in big news, wink, wink, poke, poke, when we get in there. So just stay, or something to that extent. As it is, he goes in there. Yeah, we have all this conversation, good, bad, or indifferent. And then he just says, by the way, you're queen. You'll be doing a good job. I'm out. Yo. That is a good way to throw everyone into chaos. That is a good way to not get what you need done. And I feel like he should have talked to Sansa before this and had at least given her some sort of a heads up that this is going to happen.
I guess I would. My question is this just made to drabble up drama and to give stakes to a future conversation when obviously we've already acknowledged that he is leaving? Like, that's not a spoiler. But is this scene, like, in reality, as others have mentioned, like, this conversation would probably happen behind closed doors. It would probably be Sansa and his other advisors and his small council, as you may, in the north, in a small room. So more you guys talk about this scene, more I think it's just a drama scene for the sake of drama. It really, just to make stakes for something else. Poor writing. Anyway, Tyler.
I won't go as far as poor writing because it's more of a problem they're at with the show, but I will probably agree that it's probably just a scene that they kind of made like this to kind of add tension and drama to everything like that, because does it start sowing like seeds of disgust, or not disgust, like distrust between Sansa and Jon there because of that. And obviously there we have Littlefinger in the room, which Nick will always remember. I constantly swore Littlefinger's name in vain all the time there. Littlefinger was not right. He was dead wrong. So, I mean, we have, and I think, is that this scene, this episode 2, where Jon and Littlefinger are down in the crypts and he chokes out Littlefinger too?
Yes.
Yes, that was going to be my next point.
Yeah.
Got a good one on that, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously Littlefinger is doing what he can to manipulate people around him, but yeah, it all stems from like everything I think just stems from the problem of this being the large group of Northerners that they were talking to instead of a small council like Gary had mentioned. Plus, too, like another problem is like how much time has passed between John being proclaimed king in the North to John deciding to leave. That's a problem we're going to run into with the show a lot of just time travels very quickly here in the show without and you're not made to realize it basically. Nick.
There is a scene in this episode where the Raven sent from Tyrion and Dany gets to Sansa and Jon, and they're talking on the ramparts about, hey, come down and visit us. And they don't say anything. Like they do talk amongst themselves. They don't do anything. They don't seem to act on it. Davos is there, and they review just really quickly, like, should we, shouldn't we, yada yada yada. That's or maybe I've got my two missives transposed. I think it's. Oh, anyways, this first missive comes through from the Ravens that says you should come down, and he's like, I don't know if I should. And then at some point, same episode, he gets another missive from Sam in Old Town and says, hey, we have a bunch of dragon glass in Dragonstone. And I think that's what pushes him to go make this move. Again, we, being the audience members, seeing all these individual interactions, we understand that makes more sense now. And hey, how convenient, we're going to go down and talk to Dany. And so I think from which all of this is not shared with the greater group in person. Sansa knows it, but still thinks it seems very suspicious. And I wanted to highlight that too, that I don't think Jon necessarily just goes. I think I agree with Steven and everyone else that he should have had these conversations first with Sansa or a small group before he proposed it to the larger group to let everybody know. But I think he just sort of makes the decision to go. Do we think it's giving Jon too much credit that he didn't tell Sansa to see if she was brave enough to stand up and contradict him? Because she has in the past. Then maybe he feels like, okay, she stood up to me. Maybe I am planning to leave this in her capable hands. I think he was testing her in some way, and that's why he didn't tell her. Because I agree, it's a glaring miss. I'm not trying to add a question on an already existing question, but I'm just devil's advocate. Tyler.
To give you a heads up, Nick, the timeline was he receives the Raven from Sam first about the pile of dragons, the mountain of dragon glass, and then it's the note from Tyrion there.
Gotcha.
And as far as your thing there, I'm still going to fall back on this whole thing. I think it's just made to drum up tension, distrust between them two when really it's not needed to be there. There could have been a bigger discussion there around the small fire there when Jon was showing everybody the notes or something like that. But again, we didn't get that because we have 11 episodes of story left to tell. 11 hours of story left to tell. Steven.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I don't think this was any sort of clever idea. No, I don't think there's no reason it shouldn't have happened. Yeah.
Fair enough.
So
right.
I guess I have one more point, but we might already cover it. Or we might cover it with someone else. And that point is Euron's fleet magically stumbling the F upon Yara's fleet in the middle of the... I phrase this to Amanda, and Gary, get ready for your boo history here. If Admiral Nelson can't find you in freaking, what is it? I was gonna say dust, and it's not dust. Fog. If Admiral Nelson can't find you in fog, nobody can find you in fog. And Admiral Nelson couldn't find the French fleet in fog. So no, it's sort of hinted at that Euron has some magical power out on the ocean, but you never see it. And every other magical thing is at least mildly shown in this TV series. I care, Gary, and he is just able to come out at some random spot, just intercept them without anyone ever seeing him coming up. And it's impossible. It is absolutely impossible the way that his fleet ambushes this fleet, and then the what are they? The Vipers go down like there's I was gonna cuss and say they go down like something, but that doesn't really work because they're all female, and that's not what I'm trying to imply. But they go down like they suck at fighting in every shape or form. Where the only thing they have been shown to be good at in anything here is they're good at fighting. That's literally all they're good at. They're useless in every other response.
They go down like Gary in Call of Duty.
There you go. There you go.
Whoa!
Wow.
Shots fired.
Shotsy fired. I like it.
Ups are off.
But one way or another, it's a travesty of a scene. It's an absolute travesty of the scene. Nick, go for it.
I will grant you the Sand Vipers go down pretty terrible. They are supposed to be these masterful fighters. Again, I don't know how skilled they are on a boat. I don't know if the boat is rocking with 50 other people swaying back and forth and fighting on it. Don't rock the boat, babe. So I don't know if that's throwing them off somehow, but they do go down. I mean, we've only got so many characters still left from each team. So at some point, these main massive characters are going to interact, and somebody has to go down. And so they do end up dying. That's unfortunate because they were really interesting characters. However, I do have to play devil's advocate and undercut your contriving that this scene with Euron stumbling upon them in the random location was your phrase. They're anchored just off Dragonstone. They're not in the ocean. Yara didn't leave. When did she say she's going to go in the ocean?
I thought they were on their way to Dorne.
They're on their way to Dorne.
Yep.
Okay, so they're shuttling her to Dorne. Everybody knows that she landed in Dragonstone.
But why would they know the exact sail? No. But real quick, I'm gonna fight you on this, and the fight is that how would you know exactly when you are sailing in a clouded, in a foggy sea like that? Going back to my illusions from the war, from the Napoleonic Wars, the French were multiple times able to slip out of the grasp of Admiral Nelson, the best sailor on the goddamn planet.
He may be the best sailor on the whole planet.
So who is Admiral Nelson?
I hate you.
He's
Admiral
Napoleonic?
Horatio Nelson.
I thought he was a Civil War general.
He's a rum.
No.
All right, don't debate Gary. Stay with me. Focus here.
All right. I'm sorry.
Gary with history. I'm not debating the military prowess of one great admiral. However, if this is to be, quote unquote, the two largest armadas Westeros has ever seen, even if you have a huge fog, you're going to see maybe a light or something off the edge of one of the random ships. One of these massive ships is going to see the edge of this one.
Both fleets would have seen that. Both fleets would have seen the other fleet in that case. And not only does that happen, but the flagship of one of the armadas is able to strike right the flagship of the other armada. There's no way that happens. You have to get right into the core.
It could be. Maybe Yara I don't know. Maybe Yara likes to lead her ships and she's towards the front or towards the open area somehow. I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's plausible. I'm saying it's possible. So I think that there's only, and again, Euron isn't sailing from, the Shadowlands of Ashai. He's right there talking to Cersei in King's Landing. So if he sails out, because he did leave first, remember, and sailed out of the throat of the gullet of the Crown Lands, right near Dragonstone, saying, I'm going to go get you a gift. Then they said, just this episode, not last episode, again, like Chassis said, the timing's crazy. They sailed out and said, we're going to go take you to Dorne. So maybe he started sailing and saw them on the
you would have to know
and then
where
the fog
they were.
set in, and then maybe he
you would
saw
have to
them
know
just
where they were.
briefly.
And that's this was my comment to Amanda. The only other way to have this happen was you have to have some sort of spy or informant in Yara's camp to let them know when they are undocking, what their path is going to be, because you're never going to take a linear path during battle. You know which way you're going. And if that's the case, and that's the only thing that makes sense to me, and Euron knows the path that they are going to take, show us that they have someone in that camp. But if they don't have it,
wasn't
it's
shown
just
properly how they. how they found them, but I'm
It's
just saying it's plausible. It's possible.
It is implausible. It is possible, but is implausible, and it is a bad scene in general. Oh, poor Gary.
Agree to disagree. You can give it to Gary before his head explodes, or Amanda's first. Gary, you still have to wait.
I like Yara definitely has how many? She's got like what 100 ships or something. She's got quite a few ships. She took the vast amount of like Euron ships, so it's not a small amount. And I get that it's probably a heavily traveled shipping area that they might be there. It's possible to figure that out. However, and I'm not an expert on warfare, naval warfare, but usually those battles, like only small ones are able to swoop in unaware. Like if Euron was able to find him or was able to find her, he's supposed to be good. That's totally fine. Show me the tactics, because to this, for me, it was boring to watch because it was like I told Steven it was like showing me the Battle of Blackwater Bay, but skipping straight to the fighting and showing me the victor. This didn't mean as much to me because I didn't get to appreciate the mastermind behind it. I didn't get to appreciate the strategy of how it ended. So I would have appreciated to see all of it. Go ahead, Gary.
I will agree with both Steven and Amanda. Steven, that this is very improbable in ship combat, and Amanda, that there needed to be some better storytelling. However, I also been holding a joke for quite a while, and is that everything I know about ship combat I learned from Assassin's Creed and the board game Battleship.
God.
So
Yes.
that's my knowledge level.
We've got board game Battleship and Napoleonic admirals, so we've got the full gamut here. We're just basically
right?
Everyone's talking
naval
about the
warfare
poor
captains
man's
here.
Captain Morgan, Admiral Nelson. So
Oh, you go yourself, sir.
You'd be surprised how much you can learn from playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag, though. Like, I never cared about any kind of like ship tactics until I was playing that game and trying to figure out how to take down these ships. So that's a good point, Gary. Unfortunately, it is a good point.
Okay, and then my last item is this probably a Steven question. Is there a name for the weird hooked drawbridge thing? Or is it just a completely made up thing? Because I think it comes out of the front of the ship, doesn't it? Or does it come out the side?
Yeah, so this is actually something that I talked to Amanda about as well. I'm glad you brought it up. These ships are also improbable. These ships are a combination. These ships are a combination of galleys and open sea cogs, and that is not. So we're shown Westeros to be on the open sea. These how they ram the ship using that kind of plow in the front, that's what you have in a galley. Galleys can't sail in open oceans like that. It's too heavy winds, waters, they crash, they burn. So you are seeing some weird combination of ship that doesn't, it's made for Hollywood. So there's not really anything like that. That's not really a boarding technique. No. You do have those ramming things, like you'd ram and then you'd throw hooks on the other side to keep them rammed so you can board them. But other than that, it's a little bit Hollywood.
I just didn't understand it because it didn't have a ram, but it did just like have this weird like I compare it to a siege ladder, or whatever.
Yeah.
As with all things, everything I know about ship combat learned from Assassin's Creed. Anyway, Tyler.
I was going to point out, so this doesn't get lost, about this scene here, though, of like what I think the scene does well, though, is show the trauma that Theon is still suffering from the hands of Gary's favorite character there. Because at the end there, he gets put face to face with his uncle Euron, and Euron has Yara in his captor, but then Theon is thinking about going to fight him, but then he sees all of the carnage and mutilation stuff going on around him, and he instantly just starts reverting back to that Reek mindset of, just this tortured character. So he makes the final jump at the end off of the ship there and doesn't even try to rescue his sister there. So I think the scene does great for as far as continuing to build Theon's character history there of, we all started out not liking him at the beginning. Then he was tortured and everything by Gary's favorite character there. And now he's slowly kind of turning himself around there, I think, to be a more likable character. He's kind of going on a full character arc, I would say. Nick.
Yeah, I agree.
I had written down, you can actually see the moment when he breaks and you see him like, oh crap, like I'm in over my depth. I don't feel comfortable here. And he bails because Yara cries first. She drops a tear, realizing she's looking at Reek, like you said, realizing it's not Theon. He's not gonna save me. This won't end well. And I had actually a comment on that too. Not to comment on your comment, I'll let Gary give his point here. But he has a distinct moment when he's like holding his sword, looking around, thinking I should go, I should charge, and then realizes no, and drops his sword. I think first, like he doesn't drop his sword and jump. He drops his sword first, almost as if like I'm in over my depth. This isn't who I am, and then he decides to jump.
Okay, I was gonna ask the question if Euron actually wants to hurt his niece, like, because I gotta imagine there's a certain amount of respect, or do you think like they're both going out for murder?
Dude threw
Yeah.
his father off a bridge.
Brother, he threw
Brother.
his brother off a bridge. His brother was kind of a hat.
Yes, we all mourned.
Womp womp. I think he wants blood. Euron does not care. He's brutal. He's savage. He would kill her if he thought it would get him power. I think he doesn't want her dead in this instance because we had heard him say to Cersei that he would bring her back a gift. But I think that he does not care about her. I don't think there's a level of respect.
Okay, that's all.
All right, I think that was your last point there, Stephen.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Nick, what do you want to talk about?
We're kind of at the end of the show. I'll work backwards since we're currently talking about this scene. I had the question: do we think Theon should have charged Euron? Obviously, everybody always says, "Yeah, he jumped. What a coward!" Yada yada. Should he have charged? Clearly, that battle was not going his direction. What do you think?
No, and I actually, when you guys were talking about that, my thought was, honest to God, this is the only reason Yara's still alive. Because if Theon had charged, the first thing that Yara would have done was slit her throat, watched her, have him watch her bleed out, break him there. I think it's for pity's sake that he kills her, or not for pity's sake. I'm sorry. She's like what you said, the trophy now. I think that he thinks Theon would have been a better trophy than Yara, but he still has his trophy. I think but yeah, the only reason she's alive is because he jumped.
I think Theon did the right thing. Like it looks bad to everyone else. It's a serious morale booster. It's a hit to Yara, but there was no way he was saving her there. Like there was no way they were both gonna die, or at the very least Yara was going to. So no, I mean it looked if there he did such a great job acting there, like you said, Nick. We can see him break. Otherwise, I would say there's a chance that Theon knew that he could throw this to their advantage and be like, "Oh, look, I'm breaking. I'm gonna run away," when meaning to use it as a way to save her later on. But no, I think that genuinely looked like he's definitely still reeling from that damage from the hero of the revolution.
I feel like Theon doesn't have his weapon of choice, which is a bow. Like in the first several seasons, he's very apt for using a bow over a sword. And since he came back from being Reek, and maybe it's trying to forge himself more like his sister, you don't ever see him have a bow again. And I think with a bow, he probably could have resolved that situation better by just like putting an arrow through his uncle's head or his shoulder or his hand, because he claims to be a very, very excellent bowman. And I feel like if it was something he cared about, he'd probably keep up the training after his, torture. In his rehab, he'd go through some rehab.
His
Maybe
rehab.
some arts and crafts.
Personal time.
Anyway, that's all I got.
Good feedback. Good feedback. I actually had a couple questions for the group on a couple different little scenes. We talked through some of these scenes already, so I'll just go back to them with my question really quickly. Arya meets her long lost Nymeria in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question on here. Why do you think Nymeria doesn't accept Arya?
So
Nice.
I'm gonna kind of borrow from the after the episode part there, where the wonderful showrunners talk about it. That it's basically Nymeria going back to Winterfell is not who Nymeria is anymore. She is not. Nymeria is not the little wolf puppy that Arya remembers her as. So she's now got this family of wolf pack and everything like that. So her place is no longer in Winterfell. Her place is there out in the wild. She's not essentially a trained hound or anything like that. So she doesn't want to return home with Arya.
What everybody else was gonna say?
I didn't really have an answer. I'll be honest.
Not in
Oh,
the same poetic
I
words. I don't think I'm. You can still. Namira might still be like, oh hey, I know you. We were friends once, but like I'm not leaving this life I've got. I am the ruler of the pack of 100 wolves that's ruling the Riverlands right now. I'm not going to the snow frozen north.
Yeah, they even talk about this more in the books too, of like how there's a pack of wolves basically roaming the countryside, messing up soldiers constantly. Sorry, Gary.
I actually was questioning if maybe this is some, very poor symbolism of the fact that the wolf is walking away from Arya, similar to how she slowly kind of has walked her life away from her family, the Starks, the Sigil. If there's some symbolism that like she just isn't a Stark anymore, she changed, so she's now kind of just someone out for revenge, and that's all that drives her now is revenge. I don't know, but I guess it was after she had turned tail. She originally was going south to go see Cersei, found out that like there was a Stark in Winterfell. I was like, okay, well now I'll head back north, and then kind of maybe some symbolism that even though she's trying to find home, her home might not take her in. I don't know.
I I had a kind of a similar thought to Gary. I won't go as far as say I agree with Gary. That was kind of my thought too. Is that
Counting it.
Nymeria doesn't really recognize Arya as Arya. I mean, it knows her as her, but that she's changed somehow. And when she's leaving, Arya says, "That's not you." I almost kind of thought like maybe that was what the wolf was saying as well. Like, you're not the Arya I remember. You got other things I'm doing now. You've changed, so have I. Kind of the thought I took as well.
In the crummy after episode explanation, they claim it's a callback to season 1 when Arya tells Ned, when Ned says, "Oh well, you'll be a great lady and you'll command his holdfast," and she says, "That's not who I am." And it's supposed to be a callback to that, where she realizes that she never wanted to be the lady of a holdfast, so why would she hold a wolf to be trained like a common dog?
I think it could also go another way. I mean, Arya is a different person than she was in the beginning, but she is still herself. She's still claiming her name and she's coming back. Whereas Nymeria she is a direwolf and she's not. She's of the North. She's not denying that, but she's fine. This is the life she has chosen for herself now. But that's just the one that makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. So
Is it a
Fair enough.
sign that when all of the Stark's children were puppies, they were summer children, and then as winter has come for the Starks start dying, their direwolves start dying. I think Ghost and Nymeria are the 2 surviving direwolves that were in episode 1.
Yes.
And I don't know where the hell Ghost is. He's just roaming north.
He's having his
He's a
old
good
life.
boy. He's a good boy.
he
Can't
is
pay
being
for
a
that.
good
But
boy north of the wall.
Isn't that the saying is that when the cold winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack
Yeah.
survives?
Yeah, and yet so far it's been the lone wolves that are still alive. The pack's dead.
Ooh.
All right.
Or they
Well,
just
guess-
don't
good
want to pay for
commentary there.
CGI of
I guess
fake
Well-
wolves.
it's also Ned always saying this, so I guess Ned wasn't right in everything.
What are you talking
True.
about? Ned was right in everything. That's why he is the star character to this day.
He's got a good head on his shoulders. Hi-yo.
Ooh.
Anyway,
Uh,
Nick, to your next
next-
point.
My next point, speaking of our good friend Mr. Baelish Littlefinger here, he
Ugh.
and Jon in the crypts, after he has this interaction with Sansa, and you see, the quick pan around the room, I commented how most of the lords are like shook when Jon says, "I leave the North in your capable hands." But it flashes to Littlefinger, who distinctively smirks, and then it flashes to Brienne, who's like the beaming, proud mama bear. So then it goes to this scene after Sansa's been given power, or at least perceived to have the power now in the North. Jon's on his way out the door. Next scene is he hops on a horse and literally leaves. He's in the crypts with Jon and Baelish, and Baelish just seemingly like gives out all his cards. He says, "I loved your mom, essentially. I loved Kat, but she was wrong about you, and wrong on underestimating you. I love Sansa just like I've always loved Kat." Like he just like flat out admits, "Hey, I think your sister's hot," to Jon. And I kind of thought, for somebody who's always touted himself as this very, multiple motives, then they can never know what's true about you, have multiple little side schemes. He just flat out says to Jon, who's proven himself a very capable, violent person, capable of violence, "Here's what's going on. By the way, while you're gone, I think your sister's hot. Don't worry, I won't do anything dangerous." And I'm just like, dude, what are you doing? Even Jon, who knows nothing, can see that you're like thinly veiling saying you're going to attack his sister. And I was curious, what were your thoughts behind that? And don't just say poor writing, dang it.
It's almost as if the character has run out of room to exist in the show anymore, and they're just kind of using him as an antagonist to stir the pot a little bit because he's smart
absolutely
and
getting
he's
there.
conniving.
Mhm.
He's
Gary?
absolutely getting towards the end of his arc because it's interesting, but I don't know. It's just,
I just think that I don't know why Littlefinger does it, but he just, I think Jon just kind of goes into protective brother mode, and by all rights, he's the Lord of the North, and no one can tell Sansa who, like, he has the right as the king to decide who Sansa will be married to as the kingly powers and the older brother. Like, I don't think any lord would ask for Sansa's hand without clearing it with Jon. So maybe he's trying to lay some groundwork because he's thinking about the next step. And the next step is that he needs to be engaged to Sansa. And he needs to lay some groundwork. And obviously, he doesn't know Jon very well. So he just kind of lays his cards out. And unlike Jon, who makes a grand statement in front of lots of people, Littlefinger makes the statement in private, just the two of them, and allows Littlefinger to Littlefinger still gains something in that interaction, which is Littlefinger knows where he stands with Jon. And he had that conversation in a way that he didn't undermine his power with any of the other lords. Anyway, I don't want to ramble. Steven.
I'm going to disagree with Gary, and I'm going to say it's bad writing. I'm going to say that it is. I'm sorry. It is.
Do it. Take a debate for a point. Don't just say bad writing.
It is, though. It is. He is a character without a mission. Remember when Baelish was actually a clever snake in the grass, so that you couldn't tell what he was doing, what his next plan was? That Littlefinger might have been right. No, Littlefinger was never right. But
This is a ladder.
he was, for a good time, a really good villain. And they have run out of ability to write good villains, I feel like, in this show as well. And I think that it's Littlefinger. The only good villain, really, I'm trying to think of them all. The only good quote-unquote villain really remaining is Cersei. I'm not even going to include the Night King because the Night King doesn't get to talk. And we're going to get to the Night King later on at some point. But he's just there. He's a menacing presence, but he's not a good villain per se. And Cersei, I think it is the actress herself that makes Cersei such a good villain. I do not believe it's the writing anymore that's making her such a good villain. I think she's doing it herself. And props to the actress who plays her, because I hate her. I don't know. He's one-dimensional. He's boring now. He has no guile. It's bad writing.
He has no guile, like Guile from Street Fighter with the chop top, and he doesn't do Hayoukens?
Why are you doing the
Wow.
Beverly Hills
'Cause I
Cop
don't know-
theme?
Because I don't
It
know the
actually
Street
is-
Fighter theme.
Very close to a Street Fighter theme, on short notice, and not having played that game for many, many years.
Also, the
give you
Hadouken Gary was
credit.
by Ryu and Ken. Ryu and Ken. Get your Street Fighter facts right. Let's go.
So,
I'm gonna go
so
Google
Game
what
of-
the special move was for Guile.
Flash kick.
So,
Sonic Boom.
Sonic Boom.
Oh,
I was thinking Sonic
Game
Boom.
of
Sorry.
Thrones. Game of
Yes.
Thrones.
Yes, Nick.
Is what this podcast is about at 11:30
Oh,
at night.
that's what we're talking about is Game of Thrones still?
Oh,
That's what we're
yeah.
talking about.
I
We
thought we were
still
talking about
doing that.
ship battles for a while. Anyway, Nick, your next
Oh my
point.
goodness. I had on here that we had an awesome interaction with Hot Pie and Arya, where Hot Pie asks, "Have you been making pies?" and Arya says, "1 or 2."
I also got that.
Mhm.
I also
Mhm.
caught that, and I was like, it was one of those like good hidden lines that you don't catch the first time.
Mm-hmm. I had the
Yay,
interaction.
Can I talk about that scene here just real quickly?
I have some other notes
Go
on
for
that
it.
scene too. So
Um,
Tyler, you're up.
For it.
I want to say this is a great job by Maisie Williams, the actress who plays Arya Stark there, because when she learns that John has taken over Winterfell from the Boltons, her face just lights up and stuff like that. Like she almost experiences, it feels like hope for the first time in a long time that her family is still alive, essentially. So I thought that was just like a great little scene there, a little moment there for that character.
Agreed.
Nick, do you have any other points on that scene? Otherwise, I have a couple on that scene.
Go with your scenes on that. I had one other one that was a different scene.
I noted that based on Hot Pies knowing what happened to the Sept, I take that as a sign that the common people know that Cersei blew up the Great Sept, but yet there is no backlash from the lords of the common people that the ruler of the land would blow up the a large section of other lords and ladies and a holy place and
The holy place.
yeah, and no ripples happen. That was definitely noticeable, especially based on previous conversations about don't people know? Yeah, the common people know. So I would take that as a sign that maybe people just don't have the heart to face down the Lannisters and call them on their stuff. The last item in that scene is that as Arya is leaving, Hot Pie says, "Oh, well, you're actually quite pretty. I can't believe I believed you were a boy." I think there was some realization with Arya where she realized that she's been a child for she got her childhood kind of taken away from her, and now maybe as some character development, kind of Arya kind of having some womanhood, you realizing that part of her skills is her womanhood, which remembering back to when the show originally aired, there's a scene where it becomes very people still thought of Arya as a child, and it became very shocking to people. So I thought this was kind of a soft kind of introduction, that maybe there was some transition in how the writers wanted us to perceive Arya. Anyway, Nick, you're up.
Back to me. I liked your points, Gary. Those are solid points. I like that scene with Hot Pie and Arya. As you've mentioned before, it can be a bit droll because there's no constant battles. Like you said, it's just talking and exposition. But those scenes help, like you said, frame the common people's perspective. You know, Hot Pie's not rich. He's not even in a Holdfaster castle. He's just in an inn. You know, most medieval high fantasy role-playing type games.
Hot pie for king.
Over
Just to
Pod's
antagonize
dead
him.
body.
You know, those kind of inns are where most of that gossip and rumor mill comes from.
Yep.
I had a little bit on the interaction with Randall Tarley and Jaime, where Cersei's talking about how terrifying the queen who's come to usurp the crown can be, and how really, again, kind of sliding on that transition towards Stephen's view of Dany. Cersei paints a very dark picture, but a really, truthfully, not a very inaccurate one about all the things that Cersei's done, like crucifying nobles and burning all the ships from the merchants who came to tell her to leave, and feeding people to her dragons. Yeah, we see the context of that say why she did it, but if that's all you hear, and it's actually true though. I was saying,
I actually also noted that Cersei specifically says that she killed 100 masters and all these other things, but I think it's Cersei knowing her audience, and that she's talking to lords who very much have a status in this world, and Daenerys not only can be shown as a Viking murderer, sort of like raider, but also as somebody who doesn't really appreciate the status quo. And I'm sure there's not slaves in Westeros, but there is a cultural hierarchy that they don't want disturbed. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Back to you.
I had highlighted too, there's a lot of talk about us and them, right? The foreigners who have come to our shores, they're not like us. The fear mongering. So that seems unfortunately contemporarily accurate.
Like everything she said, but you're right. It was barely, not really an exaggeration, and it was taken heavily out of context, but the facts themselves as stand are pretty damning. And yet at the same time, I noticed Cersei said all those in the same breath as someone who had literally just blown up a sept with how many people in it. So
smoking literally right outside the window.
Yeah, brilliant
Selectively.
Yeah.
She selectively told her story. The story, she PR'd it up. She put some public relations on it. And yeah, it was very selective. And
she talked about cruelty when her father, or like her family, literally has a song about how they what they'll visit on other people if you go against them. Like it was brilliant piece of propaganda, because she did great, because nothing could be said to be inaccurate in what she was saying. It struck fear. It sounded bad because it was bad.
You just obscured some details.
Yes.
And then we talked about Jorah and his surgery. I highlighted the deftness, the ease at which M was able to cut away. Like he starts off very slow and precise in cutting off, and then as Jorah starts screaming, he's just like, screw it, and just starts like hardcore sawing to take off that huge chunk, showing how terrible and how painful it actually is. And then I made my comment earlier about how dangerous Grayskull can actually be, or we seem to see it be. And then my last little note was in the very beginning. Again, they highlighted when Melisandre, the Red Priestess, comes, how Varys is untrusting of her, because we've seen he does not like the Red Priests and Priestesses. And Melisandre has a line when they're trying to talk about what Melisandre may or may not have seen, and Tyrion says something to the fact of, I can't speak for the flames or prophecies. And Melisandre says prophecies can be dangerous because clearly she's had a couple that did not turn out accurate. And so we've seen falter a little bit, which we've talked about in the past. So I highlighted that comment. But in that interaction, then they talk about the prince down questionable was promised. And I think we've talked a little bit about that in the past, but I wanted to highlight again, Gary, if I could use your card on book ? Prince or princess who was promised. You get a quick recap on who that is supposed to be or could be?
Sorry, what's the question again about the prince or princess noun or
Like, who is it
Who the
supposed
prince?
to be?
Yeah, is there someone that it's supposed to be in the book, or is this more
No,
direct, or is it
everyone
just like
has
a
their own.
proposed?
Yeah, it fits several different people according to different areas. So it's like the comment in the beginning about how like everyone it totally fit their prophecy the way that they were looking at it.
Gotcha. I think those were all of my points. As we talked about the other aspects of it.
all right, Gary, did you want to talk about anything?
I have one item left. We've covered a lot today. It was just this kind of quick scene between Lyanna and Dany, where Lyanna's advice is just like be the dragon.
Olenna.
Yeah, actually, that was one of my notes
Spellings,
too.
whatever. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's also just proof that despite everyone not liking Dany, like she has a lot of random advice coming at her because she's a very unknown entity. So a lot of people are trying to influence her because they don't really know where she comes from. But also like that sort of advice coming from you left and right can, I think, kind of doesn't make her decision making on very sturdy ground. It's very much an impulse or a gut reaction, or she's ruling based on philosophy, not based on the world that she lives in. So anyway, that's all. That's all I had.
Okay.
I did think that was an interesting point though, quick Gary. I wrote that down as well. I almost forgot about it. Olenna urges Dany to not be a sheep, but to be a dragon, which is interesting because it was the complete opposite of what Dany was just telling them, that she didn't want to be a queen of the ashes. And here Olenna, fresh on the heels of all this grief from all of her family being wiped out, basically, is giving her the advice of be a dragon. But I'm sure it's not biased advice based on what she just went through.
Well, she survived the Mad King, but she didn't survive the Lannisters.
Well,
So-
She said she's not looking to survive, right? She wants vengeance.
well, and we also have to. This is Atlanta, so she does play multiple sides of a card. Let's say. So are there another reason other than hey, she's angry, she wants vengeance, that she might want this to happen? Does she maybe think that Dany being too harsh is going to destabilize her, maybe leave a opening later on? Because
I think she just wants vengeance. She has no heirs to pass any of this along to. Like, she has no stake in the world from this point on. She doesn't have any children or grandchildren. Like, she just if anything, I think, what's her name? Delana? Crana?
Olenna.
Anyway, she actually does want to burn the world. She doesn't care who's the queen of the ashes. Like, she just wants the world to be in ashes. She has no vested interest in things not being ashes.
I mean, that's a lot of talk, but I don't see that in her, the way she actually says anything. She still proceeds very methodically. I mean, she's not coming off of this as like, yeah, we need to fucking kill everyone. She's being very methodical, very thoughtful.
Except in this last thing, like normally she is, but in this case, she literally was telling Danny, I listen, I've ignored clever little men all my life. Maybe make sure you're a dragon. Like extremely, a little much more emotional for her to just urge the
It,
way
but
of.
see, that's my thing though. Is it emotional or is it calculated? Are we just going, yeah, she's definitely being emotional here, while she is just being calculated?
I don't think they really thought that much about Elena. The writers just were like, we just need some people to tell her some stuff.
My goodness.
I think you're
For
giving
Da-
her way too much backstory credit at this point, and it's just like we just need some people to tell Danny some stuff and her to disagree, and then next scene. Anyway,
I think that there is something to be said though for this is Dany's first interaction with the Lords of Westeros, and she is getting that information. I think Varys and Tyrion and several others all her life have told her if you do go back and you want to rule, you'll need to get the other Lords of Westeros' approval. So she does try to reach out to them, and the most seasoned one at the table is Elena. So she's trying to understand like what should I do? What's your counsel? Um, I think that yeah, Elena does have maybe a little bit of bias from where she's at in her story and her arc. And so the first bit of information she gets is burn them all. And so it comes off kind of a little bit of both. I think that she sees Elena and Elena has the years of knowledge to know what works and what doesn't work. Also, she knows that for all of her calculating, her current predicament is that she's kind of up a crick. And so she has maybe both sides is kind of how I see it. I'm kind of the neutral Switzerland between the two arguments. I see that she does have the knowledge to have the years of wisdom behind what she feels is the best response, but the best response comes from a place of brokenness to say, I think you should kill them all. 2 cents.
Okay, is that it then, Gary, for your point?
that is all I have for this episode.
Okay. I did find one point I wanted to talk about here that we have not actually discussed so far, and that is the game plan that Tyrion lays out for the Team Danny there,
Yeah.
basically, of how they're going to do it.
I had that one too.
So my question, I guess, just for the group here that I wrote down is, do we think Tyrion's idea is a good idea of basically sieging King's Landing with soldiers from Dorne and the Ironborn, and then taking Casterly Rock with the foreign invaders there, basically? Go for it, Stephen.
Thank you. So I found this actually very interesting because one of the things that is brought up is, his idea is to siege Casterly Rock, but who's killed in the siege? It's not just the people that you're the enemy combatants that you're sieging. It's the civilians. It's the normal, regular, everyday people. And this kind of harkens back to discussions even nowadays. You're talking about sanctions on countries. Sanctions eventually hurt the upper people. They hurt the lower people first, and that's what they're meant to do. And that's kind of what you're doing in a siege as well, is you're starving the people. And it's not the lords and ladies who are going to run out of food first. It's going to be the common man. And in a big city like Casterly Rock or like King's Landing, that siege is going to kill a lot of peasants almost first. I question whether this is a humane approach, and I think that it's brought up in this. I can't remember who brings it up for the life of me, but I think it's brought up as well that a siege isn't necessarily a cleaner option here.
I think that Bronn talks way back to Tyrion in the very beginning when they have the Battle of the Blackwater Bay. You know, in the siege, the thieves are the ones who make off like bandits, right? And talks about how everybody else starves to death, and before you know it, they've stolen all the food, and everybody else wants to kill everybody. I think this game plan is good. I can get behind all of it, except for the Casterly Rock siege. don't necessarily say if they're going to raise it to the ground, so I don't know if they're planning to attack the actual city. They just say they're going to go lay siege to it. I don't get why attacking Castle Rock is where you want to go after first. You already have most of the south with Dorne and the Tyrells over in Old Town, and you've got the Crownlands blocked off on the side with where you are in Dragonstone to a sense. You can kind of control the water. I don't get why going after Castle Rock is the big go get him. Like I wrote down the reactions of people a couple different times in these speeches with Jon and Littlefinger, and when Tyrion mentions we'll go attack Castle Rock with our forces, everybody kind of around the room smirks like, yeah. I mean, obviously the Ironborn are like, yeah, that's great, because the Ironborn have always hated the Westerly Lions. But otherwise, there's nobody there. You know that Jaime and Cersei are in King's Landing. And Tyrion knows that his father's dead. So what is the significance of taking Castle Rock? At first I thought, is this something like it's his home? He's kind of wanted to always have it, but Tyrion doesn't really care. So I don't get why Castle Rock is that important. It's way over on the other side of the country. You'd have to fly and move your army across the enemy territories to get there, which is not strategic, which Steven could probably get behind. Mm-hmm. I don't get why going after Castle Rock is that great. I would, if it was me, I'd probably lay siege to King's Landing first, because you have enough support from the troops in the south to back you up if it turns south. I don't get it. So to answer your question, Tyler, no, I don't think it's a great plan. I can get behind everything else with like moving troops, allocating people, but going after Castle Rock just seems poor for me. Gary.
I'm going to disagree 100% with Nick.
At me, bro.
However, the last person who tried to take Castle Rock was Robb Stark, right before his downfall. But I guess I'd ask the question, if you could take Castle Rock and then perhaps you appoint a new warden of the wherever the hell that is. I don't know the lands of Westeros. The West. You appoint a new warden of the West, and then you can promote a great family that used to be allegiant to the Lannisters, and now you've sown deception in the Lannister army, because now you've literally just given the prize of being like the Lords of Castle Rock to any other family who's willing to back your claim. And now you have forces on the west of the continent. So I don't know. I feel like, and sometimes it's just, let's just blow some shit up. And that's where the people you send there, you send the raiders and pillagers to a place that you don't give a shit if it is ashes when it's done. Sorry, bleep. Tyler.
You pick now to randomly censor yourself in the podcast. Disagreeing here with Nick, surprisingly, siding with Gary somewhat. But Tyrion says it in his battle plan there that Castle Rock has always been seen as the true house of power in Westeros there. So taking that is a great show of force that the largest house of power left in Westeros there can even succumb to this mighty force. So everybody else, you better kind of get in line, otherwise we're going to roll right over you. I think it's more of like a fear, a shock and awe kind of tactic there.
And if you're going to have a shock and awe campaign, why not have it be at Castle Rock?
It's all about the symbolism of taking it. Like, yeah, Tyrion knows that Jaime and Cersei are probably in King's Landing and Tywin is dead, but it's all about the show of power. Like, the Lannisters no longer have the greatest backing there anymore. I mean, granted, this is a callback to many, many episodes ago. We, the viewer, not Tyrion, know that Castle Rock is basically worthless now because the mines have run dry. Tyrion doesn't know that.
Ooh. But, yeah. Another good point.
Go ahead, Steven.
So I'm going to kind of I'm gonna be in the middle of you guys, but I'm gonna lean towards Nick on this one. I think that sieging Casterly Rock, sieges are not fast. Sieges are very, very long and drawn out things.
One quick thing though, do they actually say siege Casterly Rock, or is it just take Casterly Rock? Because I think they're going to siege the King's Landing, but I think they were going to take Casterly Rock, but I could be wrong too.
I don't remember.
I don't exactly remember, but even if they're not going to siege it, so you guys are right. This is a psychological attack mostly, because what has Tywin already said is that the mines are out of gold. There is nothing left in Casterly Rock. There is, yeah, you're going to disconcert maybe the Lannister forces, and you're hoping to draw Jaime and Cersei into being so flustered by the fact that you took their homeland that they make a bad move. And you are making a very, very big gamble, because the thing that, and the reason why I come down on Nick's side, logistics. You are crossing the peninsula to get to this city, a peninsula which is within the kind of aim of, if I'm remembering it correctly, from where they are to Casterly Rock, King's Landing is in the middle. So you now have
right in front of them.
Yeah, you now have a force, a major enemy force, which can intercept your supply lines, and you have a major naval force which can intercept your naval supply lines. And I mean, what? The kiddos and the armchair generals can talk all day about tactics. When it comes down to it, if you're going to plan a military campaign, you need to talk about logistics. And there is no logistical way to make this happen. I am what am I? I am hesitant to say that the psychological effect would be exactly what they'd want to have happen as well, because even when Robb was in the field and the North was taken, he didn't panic. He didn't freak out. He had a plan. So what, you think that doing this in down south is going to have some crazy, super different effect? You think that promoting a local lord is going to make people want to go against the Casterly Rock, the reigns of Castamere people, who Lannisters always pay their debts? No, I
Blew up the
very.
sept.
They blew up a sept, but they also the other thing that people know about the Lannisters is they play the long game. Yeah, you might, if you're gonna side with a usurper, you might get some immediate benefits, but that long game is going to come back to bite you, and I think you're going to have very, very little buy-in. I think this is a splashy and fanciful campaign. I do not believe it would be an effective campaign, and I believe it would divide the forces of, I don't know, what are you going to call them? The Daenerys forces. They would divide Daenerys forces and allow Cersei's forces to pick them off at will. It's a bad decision.
If so, you mentioned the naval force there, and that's what made me raise my hand. So either scenario plays out. If Danny's forces don't know where Euron is, only that he was at the Iron Islands and was building a fleet, and you sailed to Casterly Rock, you are right at his doorstep, and you pin your forces on the other side of the map, because they're at Dragonstone on the far east. You sail to pin half your force to the west side of the continent, and now you're pinned between the Crown Lands with Cersei and the Iron Islands with Euron. You're pinned between two forces. Yes, you've got the Crown Lands pinched, but now you're stuck with Euron's forces who are going to attack you and raid you down the coast. Or that's if you don't know where Euron is. Or if you do know Euron has just recently visited Cersei somehow, then you know if your troops go over there, you are absolutely going to go right through the middle of where he is. So logistically, yeah, it does not make sense to send your troops over there. Hearing the responses, I give you your opinions. I just don't see it as a big splashy psychological attack. It's for the mountain's sake. Take the land. Like, that's the only psychological thing. Because Tyrion's not there, Cersei's not there, Jaime's not there. If those names are there and you take that area, hey man, I'm out. Because you've got quite a force if you can take down Sir Jaime and all, the greatest general that Westeros has seen in that part of the country recently, with the War of the Five Kings. But if they're not there, even if you have a great army with great lieutenants, the head of the snake is still out there somewhere. So I don't see it as aggressive. I think it is aggressive, but I don't see it as much of an accomplishment if they do take the land. Yeah, like I said, you'd pinch your force between two different areas and split your troops in half. So I was trying to find something about it that I liked. I liked the rest of it because it's like allocating troops. Yeah, we need these other forces. These other forces can marshal here, here, and here, and I can kind of get behind those. But I just don't see Castle Rock as viable. Is my thought.
Yeah, and I guess the quote that I was looking for that I just was able to remember, it's Omar Bradley. It's amateurs talk about strategy, professionals talk logistics. Uh,
Okay.
Sorry,
I'll
hold on. And in this case, we do need to talk about the logistics of the plan, and the logistics of the plan just aren't there. And regardless of what splash it'll make, regardless of if this is the best move that you could possibly think of, the logistics aren't there. It means it's not a smart move one way or another. Just it's not.
It could be that it could be sorry Gary. It could be that Tyrion has not been in Westeros recently, so Tyrion does see Castle Rock as a really powerful figure on the field. But just because it's always been doesn't mean that it currently is. If it were me, I would have our troops sit still, which would anger everybody else at the table. But I would sit still until we can get some better reports as far as what the current status of Westeros is, and then make the logistics. That's what I think would be the more strongest thing to do, rather than, hey, my family has a lot of money. This is the great seat of power for all of the Lannisters. We should go take Castle Rock.
I was going to ask a question as to what Nick's battle plan was, and now I'm just absolutely dumbfounded. The Nick's battle plan is, let's sit and wait with a very large garrison of troops that we have no way to feed after being at sea for multiple months. Let's just wait it out for a couple months and just test the waters. Like, no, Nick, you have to send the dragons, the Unsullied, you have to send them somewhere. You have to do a shock and awe campaign. If you're going to do the shock and awe campaign, there's no better place.
Okay, all right. Eyes. The Stormlands, just south of the Crown Lands. Crown Lands encompass King's Landing and like the nearby little areas, but the Stormlands are one of the 7 kingdoms directly to the south of the Crown Lands. There isn't somebody in the Stormlands that I'm aware of who's like really named at this point. The Stormlands were originally the Baratheons until the Baratheons then became the current ruling nobility. So maybe you have some small paramount lord who's down there. You want a shock and awe campaign, quote unquote, King's Landing can become Queen's Landing, and you move from Dragonstone into the Stormlands and demolish that group if you want that. Again, she's quote unquote not trying to be Queen of the Ashes. So if you want to do something, you send an emissary or have the Queen of Dragons fly down to the Stormlands, scare this person into bending the knee, since that's going to be the motive she seems to be with Jon. Then I would have my troops make landfall there. Stormlands are known for lots of water and rain. That's why they're the Stormlands. So you've got lots of green grass and green timber. There's your wood. There's your start making a fort. There's your start making your basic battle plan layout. There's all your green grass for your horses to eat and all of the probably sheep and cattle and livestock that the noble is willing to let you take to feed your folks. Otherwise, you wouldn't just sail across the narrow sea with all your troops and no food. They would sail across even with food and sheep and all sorts of other things to feed their troops for once they get to Westeros, knowing they're going there to raid and pillage and potentially lay siege. They do still have lots of things to feed their folks with. It's not like they land on Dragonstone and say, well, we ate all our in-flight peanuts on the boat ride over. We've got nothing else to feed everybody. They would still have stuff. And again, I'm not saying stay on Dragonstone indefinitely. Stay on Dragonstone, send out emissaries, get a lay of the land and what's been going on the last few months, then go make your battle plan. If you wanted to make landfall to have a better foothold on the land, you could take the Stormlands, would be my move. If you wanted to know what my plan would be, Gary.
And I will say, I think that's a better plan than taking Casterly Rock. I do still think that going right after King's Landing, or at least the area around King's Landing, would be the best idea. If you're gonna, you have the shock of a dragon, you have these major forces, you can cut off King's Landing from the rest of everywhere else. I think King's Landing is really where you got to hit first. And you just got to understand there's going to be casualties one way or another. No, you shouldn't fly a dragon around King's Landing, burning everything to the ground while the bells ring.
Mm-hmm.
But you should also not, you know, you shouldn't try to just hop around everywhere. Use your force. You have the preponderance of power right now. Use it. Cut off King's Landing. Cut off the decision makers from the rest of everyone else. I think that's really where your best bet is. And also, it's the shortest distance. It is right there.
Again, if we're talking what the best strategy would be, I would, now that I'm thinking about it, I would go to Stormlands. I would stay there. Especially, if you know your enemies have a fleet and an army, just pick one to focus on. My army and my dragons can fly, so they go both sides. So I have the stronger show of force if I have dragons and an army on land. So I would stay on land. That instantly negates all of Euron's fleet stuck in the water. And then just build Yara's fleet right around the edge, rather than send them away like she did. Clearly, we know, hindsight 2020 now, that wasn't the best move. I would keep the fleet to guard the bay, and then if my fleet did get attacked, like we see Euron does when he comes to be aggressive, then I could fly my dragons out over the fleet. But I would keep them close by with my troops on land, keep the fleet there to guard my troops on land from the water, and then plus I still have, like Steven said, the benefit of having my troops on the ground just south of King's Landing, that they could get refueled after a long travel across the Narrow Sea and easily move them up the coast. So keep them on this side of the continent at the very least. Splitting the troops over to Castle
Splitting your forces is never a good idea. Just like splitting the party is never.
Say, all you D&D nerds out there, don't split the party.
Napoleon Bonaparte said it. Don't march divided, split, or fight concentrated.
You've got the greater show of force. The best offense is a good defense. If you think that you don't want to be king of the ashes, that's perfectly fine. But heaven help the troops that come to attack you. Just have your folks hang tight for just a quick second. If anyone attacks you, then you can make them ash. But don't go burning anybody right off the bat. That's what I would do. I don't know who asked that. There maybe?
That was my question there. All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps up everything we've got for discussion for this episode here. Another long discussion, only covering one episode, where again we basically covered the entire episode.
It's a boring episode.
Yeah, nothing happens here. I don't know why we keep doing this thing. Nothing exciting's ever going to happen.
Nah.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us here. Join us next time when we watch episode 3, The Queen's Justice, from season 7 there. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Have a good one.
Have a good night, everybody. Think more about the guidance.